My name is Jade Thorne, and I'm a director at the Portrush Heritage Group. Welcome all, whether watching from here, near or far, and thank you for your attendance this evening. We would appreciate it if our Zoom audience could please keep their cameras off and leave their sound muted for the duration. We're delighted to have you here with us this evening, and thank you all very much for your support. In the shadow of St. Patrick, we have brought together a miscellany of local culture which we hope you will all enjoy. I would like to extend a very special welcome to the Causeway Shantymen. Also to Kate Murphy and hopefully Brenda Semple, where is she here? And Colin Urwin. Yeah. Everyone gets great welcomes today. It's fantastic. So to commence our evening's programme, let me introduce to you the Causeway Shantymen, who this very evening have celebrated their very first birthday. I think John's trying out for the Shantymen there. That was his audition. The journey of the Causeway Shantymen in just 12 months is remarkable, and they've very quickly become a very unique presence in Northern Ireland's music culture. Their performances, ranging from collaboration with a West End theatre star to participating in maritime festivals and charity fundraisers, have brought joy to audiences, and the Shantymen certainly know how to enjoy themselves. Yeah. They even make taking a photograph into such fun. It's brilliant. Their infectious passion for the sea shanties not only entertains, but also serves as a cultural link to the rich maritime heritage of the Causeway Coast. Sea shanties, with their tales of sailors and struggles and the harsh realities of the sea, provide a glimpse into a bygone era. The Causeway Shantymen have drawn great inspiration from a collaboration with the Portrush Royal National Lifeboat Institute station. By becoming ambassadors for the RNLI during its 200th year, they hope to play a significant role in promoting water safety and contributing to the institution's fundraising efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Causeway Shantymen.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the very kind welcome. Everything that you heard is true, hopefully. In such detailed introduction, I don't really have much to say, thankfully, which is nice. As you heard, we were formed just over a year ago, so we're pleased to be celebrating an anniversary here with you guys in a local venue. One thing we didn't mention is the criteria for the Causeway Shantymen is that you must have swam in, seen the sea, or at least have a picture of the sea in your house. So that's all we require for your nautical skills in the Shantymen. So shanties are the work songs from the days of sail, essentially. They come in many rhythms and styles. There's halyard shanties, pump shanties, long draw, short draw, capstan, all kinds of different jobs they do. There's also another type called a four-bitter, which is kind of not a work song, but it's more for after hours and at shore, shall we say. So they're good for marking the beat. They lighten the load of labour, and we find they certainly lighten the soul as well. So we're going to sing a few shanties for you tonight. Our first one is going to be one called Santiana. So shanties are fascinating in the fact that they travel around the world, as you would expect, on ships. Santiana is a good example of kind of Chinese whispers, how a song changes as it travels around a bit. It's a pump shanty, so whenever iron boats superseded wood boats, then it's kind of transformed itself from a pump shanty, because there's no pumping involved on an iron boat, then into a different kind of like a halyard shanty or a different rhythm. So there are various things about various versions. Ours is an unhistorically accurate version that is about the Mexican general Santiana. So the stories told within the song aren't necessarily true. The battle might not have been won, or it may have. There is a similarity to the Breton sailors and some of the prayers they have to Saint Anne. So that was their patron saint. So these things have changed and evolved, and verses come and go, as you'll see throughout the rest of our songs. So here to get us Santiana is Brian Lyon.
Oh, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We're giving you Santillana. We're going to give you a bit of a local reading now from our and your very own John Logan. Where are you, John?
To me, John. To me, John. To me.
Yeah, to you. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard Chris's skill in contextualizing things. Let me try to contextualize the next piece, because those of you who are perceptive will notice that it is not a sea shanty. Now, any resemblance to Slattery's mounted foot is purely tangential, but I can vouch for the fact that the heir to Slattery's mounted foot, as performed by Owen Brannigan, Brenda, Dowda, and of course Joseph Locke, is a very good tune to which to pull a strong, steady and effective oar. So let's have the first public recitation, and perhaps the last, Up from the Bilge. You've heard of Pavarotti. You've heard of Pavarotti. Yes. And Joseph Locke the Great. Yes. And how once dear wee Dana was so difficult to beat. But there's a page of music that as yet remains unsung. So settle down and listen up, and I'll give you some of my tongue. This gallant band is organised by Chris and Garth and Bob. This gallant band is organised by Chris and Garth and Bob. It developed exponentially, and now it's quite a mob.
So true.
So many a mouth is open, and many a note is heard by those well practiced in their parts, and others less well prepared. So up from the bilges came a motley looking crew.
Wow, speak for yourself.
Some of them who knew their parts and those without a clue. And as we sing our salty songs with gusto and with joy, we dream that fame would gild the name of each brave Causeway boy. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That was your own John Logan. Thank you. The inimitable John Logan. So the next song we have for you is called Rolling Down to Old Maui. So I talked about the songs that are sung off duty. So Old Maui isn't a sea shanty as such. There's no work rhythm to it. So it's called a four-bitter, or it's called a foxhole song, whereby it would be sung, you know, below decks or at other times or at shore. So you'll know that it doesn't have the same call and response that a lot of the sea shanties do that give them that kind of work rhythm. It's been found as early as the 1850s in notebooks. And it's all about a whaler returning from the cold Kamchatka Sea, as you'll hear. So it's worth pointing out that there's, whenever you sing a sea shanty, you're hoisting sails, you're lifting the anchor, you're getting the boat out into the water, and then there's a quiet time. You're not always doing all those things, I guess. So the work songs aren't sung all the time, so there are those quiet times when the ship is sailing quite happily, where songs like this might be more appropriate. So this is where songs like Rolling Down to Old Maui.
It's a damn tough life, full of toil and strife. We wellermen undergo, and we don't give a damn when the day is done, how hard the winds may blow. For we're homeward bound from the Arctic ground, with a good ship taut and free, and we don't give a damn when we drink our rum with the girls of old Maui. Rolling down to old Maui, boys, rolling down to old Maui. We're homeward bound from the Arctic ground, rolling down to old Maui. Once more we sail with a northerly gale through the ice and wind and rain. Them coconut fronds, them tropical lands, we soon shall see again. 6 hellish months we passed our way on the old Kamchatka Sea. But now we're bound from the Arctic ground, rolling down to old Maui. Rolling down to old Maui, boys, rolling down to old Maui. We're homeward bound from the Arctic ground, rolling down to old Maui. Once more we sail with a northerly gale towards our island home. Our mainmast run, our whaling done, and we ain't got far to row. Our stunsail booms are carried away, what care we for that sound? A living gale is after us, thank God we're homeward bound. Rolling down to old Maui, boys, rolling down to old Maui. We're homeward bound from the Arctic ground, rolling down to old Maui. How soft the breeze through the island trees, while the ice is far astern. Them native maids, them tropical glades, are awaiting our return. Even now their big brown eyes look out, hoping some fine day to see our baggy sails running for their gales, rolling down to old Maui. Rolling down to old Maui, boys, rolling down to old Maui. We're homeward bound from the Arctic ground,
thank you very much. We now have Brian Shaw, who's going to shanty us roll the old chariot along and give us a little bit about the story behind it. Thank you.
Well, this song, Roll the Old Chariot, is also known as a drop of Nelson's blood. Apparently, when he died, they tried to preserve him in a cask, I beg your pardon, of spirits, probably rum, I would think, or gin, I don't know. And on the way home, the crew drank the contents of the cask, hence a drop of Nelson's blood. Well, we'll be all right if the wind was in our sails.
We'll be all right if the wind was in our sails.
We'll be all right if the wind is in our sails.
And we'll all hang on behind. And we'll roll, chariot along. We'll roll, chariot along. We'll roll,
Brian Shaw, thank you very much.
Excellent.
Okay, so our next song is called Holloway Joe. So Holloway Joe is probably a pretty well-known shanty in the ones that are right there. So it's a short drag shanty, so it's got sort of a rhythm where you need a really strong haul, and then there's a long break, and then can you go again. So if you're like pulling up a 4-sheet or something like that, or moving sails around. So first found back in the 1850s, so it goes back a bit. It's a good example of people just adding in the news of the day or things they'd heard in port and different stories and things that make up a song. So if you look for versions of this, you'll find 20 to 25 verses. We'll not be doing that tonight. But yeah, so it's a nice organic kind of song. So this is called Holloway Joe. When I was a little lad or so, my mother told me,
Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe.
that if I didn't kiss the girls, my lips would grow more.
Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe. Away, Holloway, with Holloway together. Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe. Away, Holloway, with all for better weather. Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe.
King Louis was the king of France before the revolution.
Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe.
Well, then he got his head chopped off and it spoiled his constitution.
Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe. Away, Holloway, with Holloway together. Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe. Away, Holloway, with all for better weather. Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe.
St. Patrick was a gentleman, he came from decent people.
Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe.
He built a church in Coleraine town and all it could a steeple.
Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe. Away, Holloway, with Holloway together. Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe. Away, Holloway, with all for better weather. Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe.
Well, once I had a city girl, but she was loud and lazy.
Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe.
But now I got a Portrush, that's what she
Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe. Away, Holloway, with Holloway together. Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe. Away, Holloway, with all for better weather. Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe.
You call yourself a second mate, you can't tie a bowling.
Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe.
He can't even stand up straight when the pack is rolling.
Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe. Away, Holloway, with Holloway together. Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe. Away, Holloway, with all for better weather. Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe.
Well, now can't you see the black clouds are gathering?
Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe.
Well, now can't you see the storm clouds are rising?
Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe. Away, Holloway, with Holloway together. Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe. Away, Holloway, with all for better weather. Away, Holloway, with Holloway Joe.
Thanks everybody. So our last song by the looks of it is going to be South Australia. This is also known as this is known as the rolling or ruler king in other places as well. It's a capstan or anchor shanty, and it's really from sort of the days of emigration when people travelled by sailing ship, of course, to South Australia. So Garth is going to give us South Australia.
A very sedate audience. You can clap in your hands and rise on the roof for this one, please. We're reasonably sober tonight too, but reasonably so far.
In South Australia I was born. Away, Holloway, South Australia.
Cape Thorne.
Heave away, haul away. South Australia. Haul away, you rolling kings. Heave away, haul away. Haul away, oh hear me sing. We're bound for South Australia.
And now I'm on Australia's strand.
Heave away, haul away. Bound for South Australia. Haul away, you rolling king. Heave away, haul away. Haul away, oh hear me sing. We're bound for South Australia. Haul away, you rolling king. Heave away, haul away. Haul away, oh hear me sing.
Where?
We're bound for South Australia.
Ladies and gentlemen, massive round of applause, please, for the Causeway Shantymen. Our next guest this evening, we're going to kind of split our next guests so that we can rest Colin's beautiful voice for a little while in between. So our next guest is going to be Colin Urwin, and he's making a very welcome return here to one of our heritage evenings. Colin has performed in Australia, Asia, Africa, America, and has just very recently returned from a 2-week tour in New York and Chicago, where the houses were packed out every night as Colin told stories and sang as a brand ambassador for Bushmills whiskey. The 2 weeks before that, he was in India touring with a choir, always very busy. This year, we will see him travel back to the US, Newfoundland and Korea, as well as performing at festivals all over Ireland and the UK. He also has 3 books coming out this year: The Madman's Window and Other Stories, Irish Folktales of Sea and Shore, and a book of Rathlin Island folk tales. So keep an eye out for all of these. So we're going to have about 15-20 minutes of Colin, and then I'll introduce our next wonderful guest who will be reading some poetry for us, and then we'll come back to Colin to finish. So Colin, over to you.
The last time I was here, I can't remember what I told. I think I might have told the story about the whale's tooth. Anybody remember that? Yeah. Was anybody here the last time I was here? Yeah. Anybody not here? Anybody not remember? And I think I maybe did something about the Spanish Armada as well, maybe something like that there. So we're not going to do those tonight. I was going to open with a song, but I'm not following that. Or maybe do a wee song later. But tell you what those guys have put in my head. They put South Australia in my head. That's what they put in my head. And I wasn't going to tell this tonight, but I'm going to tell it now. About 10 years ago, I was in South Australia. And I met this old woman. And she told me a story that she had never told another living soul. That's what she told me. I felt very privileged that she was telling me this story. And I'm going to tell it to you now. Don't mind the rain or the roaring seas, the weary nights never worried me, but the hardest part of a sailor's day is to watch the sun as it fades away. It was 1942. And this lady was just a young teenage girl. And her brother, her adored brother, next to her in the family, just turned 18 years of age. And he volunteered to join the forces. It was the middle of the war. His father had been in the First World War. He wanted to, do his bit. And he didn't wait until he was called up. He volunteered. And when his birthday came, that was time for him to go. And he was excited. He wanted to join the RAF and be a flyer like his older brother. But when he went for the test, he was colorblind. And they wouldn't take him. And there was nothing he could have joined the army, but his father had returned from Flanders with all the horror stories of the trenches and the mud and the blood. And all those young fellas of that generation, they wanted to get as far up in the sky as possible or as far out to sea as possible. So he joined the Royal Navy. And he left his studies behind. He was at art college. He loved to write poems. He left all that behind. He left his sports. His favourite sport was swimming. It was the only thing he excelled at in the world of sport. He left it all behind and went off at 18 to join the Navy. Well, they sent him off to Portsmouth to do his basic training. And of course, he started to dream about where they would send him when his training was over. Maybe the Mediterranean. He had read books about Malta, Cyprus, Alexandria. Maybe he would go to the Pacific, Hong Kong, Singapore. All these exotic places were in his mind. And he did his training. And when he had finished, he got his orders through to join a ship in Larne. Not very exotic. It's not exotic now, and it wasn't exotic then. Well, it was a little bit more exotic then, actually, than it is now. So anyway, he went to a ship. Orders were orders. You had to do as you were told. And he went to a tiny little ship called HMS Falante, which was based at Larne. Now, Larne was the safest port in all the world for a Royal Navy ship, because German submarines hadn't started to come into the Irish Sea as yet. And so this ship was based in Larne. Why was it based in Larne, the safest port in the world? Because this ship was central to the Battle of the Atlantic. It was the flagship of Admiral Sir Max Horton, who had been recently appointed as the Commander-in-Chief of the Western Approaches. And he was told directly by Sir Winston Churchill, win the Battle of the Atlantic or we lose the entire war. And that's what he told them. And so from this little ship, they conducted all kinds of operations out in the North Atlantic, off the north coast of Ireland, off Rathlin, even out in the North Channel. Every single escort ship, every escort group that escorted convoys from North America were trained by that little ship out of Larne from 1942 onwards. And there was HMS Falante, there were two Royal Navy submarines. There was a flotilla of little wooden motor launches, about 40 foot long. And they would simulate all these exercises out in the waters off the north coast of Ireland. It was top secret. It was top secret. The entire crew were sworn to secrecy. Everybody in the forces were told, loose lips sink ships. But these guys were told especially, do not tell anyone where you are or what you're doing. Well, the young fella went off to his ship. And it was exciting to begin with, all these exercises, all this military hardware. It was all live fire. They were dropping depth charges, firing star shells into the sky, and the two submarines were acting as U-boats. And it was exciting. And he wasn't able to tell his family where he was or what he was doing. And so for months, he was away at sea, and his poor mother and his young sister and the rest of the family didn't know what he was doing. And one night, the young girl was awakened from her sleep. She got up and she came downstairs. She heard a bit of a commotion. She came down. Her mother was sitting in the kitchen, crying, pulling her hair, wringing her hands. Mother, what is it? What's wrong? Oh, please. It's your brother. It's your brother. He's in the waters. There's blood everywhere. He's wounded. Petrol is on fire. There's sailors drowning in the water. And the young girl said, is it a letter? Is it a telegram for the Admiral? They let me see. And she said, no, I dreamt it. Oh, Mother, you dreamt it. Yes, I dreamt it. Thank goodness for that, she said. I thought it was real. The mother said, it is real. I see things. I've always seen things since I was a little girl. Always. I've never told anyone about it. I'm telling you now, this is real. Something has happened to your brother. But without any proof from the Admiralty or anything from the Ministry of Defence, nothing could be proved. Time went by and no news is good news. They just had to wait. But then a letter came from the young sailor telling his mother that he was coming home on leave. Leave. In the middle of the war. 2 weeks leave he was getting. 2 weeks. It was unheard of. And home he came. He was a little thinner than he had been when he left, but so was everyone. Everyone was on rations. And his mother pampered him. His father, he had a butcher's shop and he brought some extra sausages home. And they fed the young fella up and pampered him and catered to every whim. And one morning, the young sister, she breezed into his bedroom without knocking the door. And there he was, standing, stripped to the waist, shaving what little hair he had on his chin, in a little mirror at a washstand. And on his back, there was a big, angry scar running from one shoulder down his back. His sister, what happened to you? How did you get that? Shh, come in, close that door. He pulled his shirt on. He said, I don't want you telling Mother about this. You know what she's like. She'll fret. She's highly strung. She'll only worry. Tell me what it is then. Only if you promise not to tell Mother. Of course, tell me. He started to tell her the story. He was on exercise off the north coast of Ireland. In the dark, a ship, 2 of the motor launches collided in the exercise. They burst into flames. And all the sailors were thrown into the water. The petrol was on the surface. It was all on fire. He was only 19. But he was fit as a fiddle. And being the good swimmer that he had been, he never thought anything of it. He got into the water. He tried to save some of these sailors. And he got injured. A piece of wreckage tore into his back. Anyway, they got him back on board. And he ended up in a military hospital in Belfast, Campbell College. As is now. It was taken over then by the Admiralty as a military hospital. He ended up in there for a couple of weeks while they mended him up. And then his captain gave him 2 weeks leave because of his conduct. And there he was, home on leave with his mother. Then the sister told him about that night in the kitchen and everything that she had described and everything that she saw in her dream. How could she have known? And in such detail. The wound on his back, the fire, the sailors. And from that day on, the young sister and the brother always referred to their mother behind her back and very affectionately as the old witch. And I don't know about you, I would not have believed in, I don't know, what would you call it? Extrasensory perception, sixth sense. I wouldn't have believed in it. And I wouldn't have believed that story, except for one thing. The lady who told me that story was my Aunt Nora. She had emigrated after the war and had lived in Australia for 50 years. And the young sailor, very proud to say, was my father. Thank you. And the old witch, she was my grandmother. Well, that kind of leads me on to, I was in Australia last year then, 10 years later. Different part of Australia. I was in Sydney at a storytelling festival. I'm just sitting eating my breakfast, minding my own business this morning. And people at the table, we were just chatting, you know, what have you seen? What have you done while you're here? I said, I'm going to go whale watching. And this lady came over and said, sorry, I couldn't help but overhear you there. You said you were going to go whale watching. I said, that's right. She says, do you mind if I sit down beside you? I said, no, not at all. And it turned out she was the only Aboriginal storyteller at this festival. There's hundreds of people there. She was the only one who was a native Aboriginal teller. Her name was Dr. Jade Edwards. And she studies Wales and folklore and her own people, the folklore of her own people. And she started to tell me all the stories about her own tribe, who were the people who lived around Sydney Harbour before the Europeans came. She told me some beautiful detail of folklore, but she told me this thing. She told me that the whales, the humpback whales that travel up the east coast of Australia from Antarctica up to the equator in Indonesia to breed every year, they're all females. And then they mate up in the warmer waters, and then they come back down again to Antarctica, where they fatten up, have their calves, and go back again the following year. So she's telling me all this, and she said, you know, we believe that the women of our tribe, when they die, they are reincarnated as these female humpback whales. And she told me all sorts of stories about that. And then she told me all about the slaughter of the whales. The Europeans came. They set up whaling stations all down the east coast of Australia. They slaughtered tens of thousands of them until the numbers were reduced down to just a couple of hundred. But you remember the Save the Whale in the 1970s. You remember all that? It worked, and it did save the whales, save these whales anyway. And nowadays, there's 45,000. The numbers have gone back up to 45,000 females that travel from Antarctica up to the equator every year. So it's amazing. And she was telling me what happened to her tribe and what happened to her people when the Europeans come. And it was quite harrowing to listen to that, you know. So anyway, she got up to leave the table. She said, when are you going whale watching? I said, tomorrow morning. I will ask my ancestors if they will come and greet you. And I said, thanks very much. That's decent of you. I didn't know what else to say. So anyway, I went out in this boat, and 5 minutes out of Sydney Harbour, the guy stops the engines, pulls the boat round. He says, I think we have a whale underneath. Up came this humpback whale right at the side of the boat. She stayed there for the entire time. A couple of other ones came as well. Her calf came up. She lay on the water and she crashed her huge 15-foot fin down on the surface of the water. She came up and showed us her flukes, and then she breached 4 times out of the water right at the side of the boat. And it was just, there were people weeping. It was such an emotional experience. It really was. So we were going back into the harbour again, and I chatted to the 2 guys that were running the trip. I said, how common is that there? Guy says, I've been doing this for 20 years. You never see that, ever. You don't see all that behaviour in one go. You are so fortunate. You are lucky to have witnessed that this day. So I'm back in. Dr. Jade Edwards said, well, did my ancestors greet you? I said, they did, and in some style. Thank you very much. And off she went, as if nothing had happened. And it was such a moving experience, I wrote this song about her and the whales, and I've since sent it to her. It's called The Heart of the Whale. Bear with me, there's something not right. I said it was good enough for folk music earlier there in a joke, but it's actually not. You need to tune that wee string there. That's it there. That's better. Here we go, start that again. Heart of the Whale. I forgot to tell you this, but when we were out in the boat, the whale was doing all this stuff. There were 2 rainbows in the sky behind it. It was like a video for Greenpeace. Really amazing. Small boat in the ocean, rainbow in the sky. everything in slow motion. Great whale passes by. Just for that moment, the whole world reconciled. My eyes are wide open. I wish like a child. For the heart of a whale, for the heart of a whale, for the heart of a whale, the heart of a whale. She recalls the blood spilling, but absolves me somehow. And despite all the killing, she lives for the now. Then she calls her ancestors from under the sea, and in that simple gesture, she is giving to me. From the heart of a whale, from the heart of a whale, from the heart of a whale, the heart of a whale. She is strength to forgive, so little have we. Take this song as a gift I offer to thee. The whale rises to greet me, blows her breath in the air. She dwarfs me completely, but she knows that I'm there. Then she chooses to come near. With one sweep of her tail, in her eye there is no fear. How could my courage fail? With the heart of a whale, with the heart of a whale, with the heart of a whale, the heart of a whale, the heart of a whale, the heart of a whale. Shouldn't have sung all those shanties. Do you want to take a wee break? Okay. We'll see you after the break. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen.
It's such a mesmerising voice, lovely use of vocals. So this evening we're going to have our next guest now. We've got Kate Murphy and Brenda Semple. Kate is a founder member of this heritage group and a storyteller of some repute. Kate and Brenda were very much involved in the work and publications of the Portrush Writers Group. Brenda, born and bred in Portrush, enjoys amateur dramatics and this year directed the Portrush pantomime. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to Kate and Brenda.
Brenda and I wrote for some years with Portrush Writers. And we're very serious people, Portrush writers. So we had difficulty finding material tonight, which was entertaining. And I was reminded when the Shantymen were speaking that they said what you would hear from them might not always be the truth. But what you would hear from Brenda and I tonight will absolutely be the truth. Just remember that. Did ever you lose your car? I see a few heads nodding. I came out of the Portrush the clinic last year when we were having our flu jabs or our COVID jabs, or whatever. You know when you meet people that you haven't seen since the last jab, and you're stopping to chat to people you haven't seen since the previous year. And I came out chatting away to somebody and hopped into the first white car that I saw. It was open. I settled myself. The seat didn't feel quite right, and the key wouldn't go into the ignition. And I looked at the back seat, and there were a few unfamiliar things lying in the back seat. I suddenly realised I was in the wrong car. It was an upgrade from my wee Venga, mind you, but it wouldn't start for me, or I might have been away in it. I crept out of it again, feeling very guilty and looking around in case anybody saw me trying to steal their car. So if you do leave your car, make sure you lock it. This one's called Meg's Memory, or the multi-story mix-up, and it's from a Kilray woman called Maud Steele. Now, Meg had a terrible memory. She just could not mind where things was. She spent her life looking and searching for handbags or car keys or gloves. Mind, she put things away in a safe place. Does anybody recognise that? But then it would just leave her mind. And when she was going out shopping, her handbag she just could not find. She'd try hard to think where she'd put it. She'd search high and low, up and down. But as often as not, when she found it, not one shop was still open in the town. She'd go up the street for a lettuce and come back with tomatoes instead. Sometimes she'd come home with potatoes when what she went out for was bread. It was just the same thing with the letters, like the bills we all get. And she'd stuff them away in a cupboard. And then, well, of course, she'd forget. They would come to switch off her electric because she'd forgotten to pay. She just could not know where that bill went, though she minded it came in Monday. Now, Meg, she just loved a day's shopping. In Belfast or Coleraine, So one day she got in the motor, the Tower Centre was where she would go. But when she got up to the centre, the big tower block park loomed ahead. There wasn't a space on the ground floor. So up the level she sped. At last she was lucky. She parked it. Remembered to lock it all round. The bargains were waiting to tempt her. So she got in the lift and flew down. She came back 2 hours later, exhausted, her shopping bag trail on the ground. She pressed the button for ages, but the old lift just wouldn't come down. In a while, she was that scunnered waiting. She thought she'd go up the stairs instead. There seemed to be hundreds and hundreds, and her old feet were feeling like lead. At last, through a door, old Meg staggered. The one that was marked level 3, to where she was quite sure she'd parked it, but no car of hers did she see. Then Meg, she flew into a panic. Me poor wee Fiesta, she wailed. Some bad boy's run off with me motor. The villain, he ought to be jailed. Send for the police, she shouted. Me poor wee Fiesta's been stole. There's some bad boys about Ballymena. What brought me up to this hole? I hope there's nobody here from Ballymena. Sorry. The police took her back to the station to get a few details put down. Don't worry too much. There, madam. We'll have our suspicions. Sit down. The policeman said, "Now, what is your number?" "It's EI. No, that was the last one." "Oh, mister, I'm hopeless with numbers. You'll just have to phone Jimmy and ask." "Well, what is your phone number, madam?" "Kilray 40. Lord, I can't mind. So they had to get out a big phone book and check it out line after line. Well, at last they got down all the details, the number, the colour, the make, the time she came in, and her address, and by now it was getting quite late. Just then a big policeman came over. He said, "Madam, we've just found your car." "Oh, thank God," said Meg, "yous are good uns. I hope the boy didn't get far." "I suspect that it's just where you left it, on level 5, as you will see. You were 1 floor too low. Sorry, madam, you were looking for your car on 3. Your memory is not too good, madam, so next time you need some new shoes, would you stick to Kilray for your shopping and stay there till your memory improves?" So girls, if you'll all take a warning, if up to the Tower Centre yous head, take note of the level you're parked on and don't end up in bother like Meg.
Be hard to top that one. My mother was born in 1937 in Cliggerna, a small townland in County Tyrone. In those pre-television days, families and friends sat around the fireplace telling yarns, singing songs and reciting party pieces. In one definition that I found, party pieces are a peculiar kind of public representation. They are neither formal recitals nor wholly spontaneous. They're something in between. Performed to entertain, they usually happen after a few drams and a wee bit of good-natured coaxing. Go on, you will. Like many of her generation, my mum had a party piece of her own for such gatherings. Not a singer, she had a poem, the reading of which humoured her so much she could barely finish without the tears of laughter rolling down her cheeks. After she died, I found this little poem in her best black patent handbag. It was tucked away alongside a linen handkerchief embroidered with delicate flowers on one corner, a wedding place name written in beautiful inked and loopy script, a strip of matches, and 2 long-forgotten mint imperials. I'd like to read it for you now. My accent might not be quite right for it, but I hope you enjoy the simple humour of it as much as she did. It's called The Ballad of Wee Willie and Big Mary. Wee Willie still lived with his mother, though he was 54. He just worked away on the farm and he never went out the door. A miserable looking crater, as thin as you could get. 7 stone would be his limit if he was soaking wet. Then his mother passed away. To her funeral, neighbours came. No longer there to shelter him, Willie was now fair game. At the graveside, there were several girls who made sure they kissed him. But Big Mary waited till the end. She wasn't going to miss him. A hefty heifer. Man, she was as broad as she was long. She gave him a hug and lifted him with big, thick arms so strong. Like a roaring fire were her cheeks, like tree trunks were her legs. Every morning an Ulster fry, sausage, bacon, eggs. When she finally set him down, she said, I might call some day for tea. Willie was dizzy, feared and flummoxed. Aye, that's all right by me. So she started to call with cakes and buns, for she was a fair old baker. He thought that she was after him, but she was after acres. You see, she had a wee farm of her own, nothing but whin bushes. Her weena sheep they had to graze in among the rushes. She had her eye on his nice land, its rolling fields so green. The good farmhouse, the tidy yard as nice as she had seen. She turned the charm up full on him. He thought she was a clinker. It wasn't long till she reeled him in, hook and line and sinker. Before he knew it, the date was set, and she had him up the aisle. But they had no choice. With her size, they had to come down single file. Excuse me. Into the wedding car was a squeeze. She must have been 20 stone. Willie was jammed up against the glass, for she filled it all on her own. That night, he got into bed before her, sort of feared he lay still. Then big Mary, she got in, and he sort of rolled downhill. I think it's straight to sleep, she said, for that big day did weary us. He lay in tight at her back. The heat from her was serious. He thought about the coming winter and how she'd keep him warm. He thought about the buns she'd make and how she'd help him farm. She'd be a quare help with this sheep, for lambing was a battle. And with her size, she'd fair block a hole if he was moving cattle. Aye, he slowly came to the conclusion she'd be good about the place. Soon he was drifting off to sleep with a smile upon his face. How does this story end up? The marriage, was it a go? Was it happily ever after? I'm sorry to tell you, no. For later on that night, disaster. The marriage was ill-fated. Big Mary rolled over in her sleep. Wee Willie suffocated.
Thank you very much, Brenda and Kate. They were hilarious. Thank you. Colin, we are ready for part 2 if you are. Thank you so much.
What would you like? You want to laugh? All right, I'll give you a wee laugh or two, yeah. I've been over to America a time or two telling stories, and it never ceases to amaze me. They're just different from us in County Antrim, you know. They just are. They're so similar and yet they're so different. I mean, I was just back there a couple of weeks ago, and I went down one morning for breakfast, you know, and today was a gorgeous day, wasn't it? It was a day like that. Everybody told me Chicago's freezing, and it was freezing one day. The rest of it was like just like that, unseasonably warm. You know, so I could do that. They're all sitting at the breakfast table. I said, "It's a beautiful morning, isn't it?" Colin, it is awesome. Isn't it awesome? We are so blessed with this weather today. And you're kind of sorry you opened your mouth, you know. And I was telling them, we're not like that in County Antrim. We're a different breed. I go to a wee shop every single morning in life, right down in the village, get the paper, you know, and the loaf. And it was gorgeous this morning. But whether it's gorgeous or not, I always do the same thing, just to tease the women in the shop, you know, for they're that dour. County Antrim women, through and through. I was in this morning, you know, my sleeves rolled up. Isn't that a gorgeous morning, ladies? One of them says, aye, but will it last? I think it's trying very hard to rain today. And I was telling the Americans, I says, we are completely different from you. I says, you know, or in the county, I says, yeah, you heard the glass half full, half empty. We're definitely half empty. But the Americans are not half full, they're overflowing. It's just, they're just gushing all the time. And they found this very strange, you know, and they were asking for example, what do you mean? And I was telling them about my mother. I says, my mother lived till she was 95. Never had a home help, never had anybody in looking after herself. Went shopping and we were called in, the family, you know, looked to her needs and stuff, but that was pretty much it, you know. But she had wee things, you had to take her to the hospital to get checked. We called it the wee MOTs, you know, her hip and her heart and her, you know, her back. And anyway, I was taking her up to Belfast this day in the car, you know, and she's away, looking out the window, you know. And I says, where are we going today, Mother? Royal Victoria Hospital. So I knew what bit of her were getting checked out, you know. And said, but she's not talking to me, she's dreaming, you know. And I said, Mother, what are you thinking about? She says, you know what I'm going to tell you? She said, if I'd have known I was going to live this long, I'd have took better care of myself. I says, that's your glass half empty again, Mother. Shoulder starts to go and all, you know. But anyway, so I was explaining all this to the Americans. They were very taken by all this. They're also very taken by the accent. No matter where you go, Colin, say something. We love your accent, man. It's such a beautiful brogue. And I'm telling them, I don't have a brogue. You have an accent. I don't have an accent, you know. So, because I was in Texas last year, and it's vast, you know. Ireland, you would put about 20 Irelands in it, you know. It's huge. And but everybody speaks the same. They've all got exactly the same accent. Just think John Wheaton, you know. So I was telling them about, somebody said, that lady said about I don't know if I have the right accent or not. The Americans would find that hilarious, you know, because they all talk the same in this one state, you know. And I was saying, no, I said, I said, in County Antrim, where I come from, I says, Belfast, for example. I said, you land in Belfast, you get off the train, you step out, you're looking for directions, you go to a taxi driver or a bus driver or something, you know, could you tell me how to get to City Hall, please? All right, big lad, you just go down the street or turn left, and then you're just following roads going up the street, and they're shouting at you, and you're petrified, because you think they're angry, you know. And I says, but then if you come down the road a wee bit towards Larne, it softens a wee bit, you know, and I says, they're all right, love. Is everything all right? No matter what, you know, I don't know how long you went to your door and she opened the door a wee bit. Is everything all right? Here's me. They start every sentence with, here's me, love. Everything all right? And I says, then you go to Ballymena. Who was talking about Ballymena? Oh, somebody said to me down the back there, Ballymena. I said, that's only another 20 minutes in another direction. It's still in County Antrim. And they all talk totally different. If I'd be Beg's Peck, I'll not be Betty again. I'm going to see my Aunt Jane and Collie Betty. And then you come down to Glenarm where we live. It's completely different again. You know, two old boys stand at the corner. You get off the bus at the Hitherdew Tavern. Two old fellas stand at the bridge corner there. Says, he me was on you. Says, me. Says, I. Says, I know what on. Says, it was like you were. You haven't a clue what they're talking about. So I'm going to tell you a wee story. I was so lucky in at my stage of life now. When I was young, the pubs were full of old boys telling old full yarns. A lot of them had been to sea. A lot of them had been around the world, and they were full of stories and wisdom. And I just sucked it all up when I was a young fella. And you put this in my head here, but the accents and stuff there. You know the difference between a board and a bird, don't you? You make a door with a board and a door with a bird. Well, this wee thick story I'm going to tell you is in the bird lingo, you know. And it concerns an old fella that I knew when I was a young fella, you know. And I don't know what he'd done in his younger life, but marriage didn't enter his head. But he got the notion for it later on in life, and he married very late on in life. And the lady that he married, she was, well, you'll hear about her in the story. Anyway, I'll just tell you, I'll not mention the guy's name, just in case you never, ever No. But anyway, I've said it in the present day rather than when this all happened. And it's called never settle down. You know what that means, don't you? Never settle down. Right? I took a notion for a woman, and me near 83. She was nae spring chicken, but she was fresh enough for me. I met her at a soiree for the old folk round about, and I thought I'd grasp the nettle and ask wee Martha out. So I sidled up beside her and says, how'd you like a date? We'll maybe go a wee run sometime and I'll take you for a treat. Well, she turned around and she looked at me, and I knowed my luck was in. For she, well, why no? Sure, we're no too old to sin. Were you thinking in the pictures, or what was in your mind? As long as there's no climbing, I likely would be fine. I'm no too bad if the going's flat. I could walk for half a mile, but then he put me in a hill for my knees and hips as wild. I could hardly make the stairs at night. I had to slide up in my bum, and trying to get a doctor, you'd be half dead before he'd come. You had to rig the surgery and wait for half an hour, and just by that the postman comes and him rattling at the door. And by the time you get him sorted and come back to explain, the wee receptionist is hung up and answer, I get named. And then you can't just land into them, for they'll tell you to come back. And then you hit to ring again, and it's the same old flipping crack. And then he get me started. Says, I think we hey. And she went on and on and on and on, and I couldn't get away. She complained about the weather, the Russians and the Yanks. The whole thing's rotten to the core, she, especially the banks. And she was getting herself all revved up. And says, oh dear sweet death. And I just get in before her as she come up for breath. Says, what about this date? Are you interested or no? She, sure I tell you, I said that I would go. Well then, make up your mind, says I. Do you want a cup of tea? Or an ice cream? Or a fish and chip? I know a wee cafe. Oh, she says, I couldn't eat a big fish supper now. That would kill me with a heartburn, bite me up like glue. I wouldn't get a wink of sleep, it would lie on me like a brick. Boys, I'll tell you the last time I had fish and chips, I was queer and sick. I had to ring the surgery and wait for half an hour. And just be that the postman come and him rattling at the door. And by the time I got him sorted and come back to explain, the wee receptionist had hung up and answered, I get named. And you can't just land into them, for they'll tell you to come back. And then you have to ring again, and it's the same old flip and crack. I had to get an enema. And that loosened up my pipes. I went through a whole big box of them wee baby wipes. So thank you, but no thank you. No fish and chips for me, for I wouldn't wish an enemy my own worst enemy. Says I, excuse me, Martha, could I maybe get a word? And she turned around and she looked at me as if I was some strange bird. Says I get the picture. So is it ice cream or is it tea? It's a very simple question, but mind we hadn't got all day. Oh, she, I couldn't drink a cup of tea. That would run through me like a drain. And while bothered with my blather, and I hate that old ice cream. It always leaves me thirsty and sends shivers down my spine. My mother was the very same. It runs in her bloodline. Sure, my sister choked in ice cream. The doctor come too late. She was alive and well the day before, and her only 98. I had to ring the surgery. Wait for half an hour, and just by that, the postman coming and rattling at the door. And by the time I got him sorted and come back to explain, the wee reception hung up and answer I get named. And you can't just land into them, for they'll tell you to come back, and then you have to ring again, and it's the same old flip and crack. And then he get me started. Says, you raisy res. And she went on and on and on and on until my head was just a biz. She complained about the pension, the price of oil and gas. She says, you pay your taxes all your life for what? A free bus pass. A free bus pass. Well then, what about a drink, says I. I had to just butt in. And she turned around and she looked at me and she says, well, we're no too old to sin. I like a wee hot brandy. But then I ramble on too much, and only more than 2 or 3 I'd be tacking double Dutch. Well, then we'll steer clear of the drink, says I. We don't let you loose. And there was nothing else left for it, but me and her stayed in the house. And we sat there on the sofa, and we cuddled up like weans. And she never shut her mouth about her bad feet and her pains. Says I can't stick this. I'm going to hit you later. And then I had a brainwave, and I took my hearing aid batteries out. Wasn't I just sat there and smiled and nodded here and there? And not once did her tongue stop nor she come up for air. Well, I call most Fridays now if I'm no clodding darts. But I always take my batteries out before wee Martha starts. But then, one night, she says to me, "Do you think could we get wed?" And of course I didn't hear her right, we ended up in bed. And I hugged her and I kissed her. Says I'm yours the night. And she said something back to me and I blew out the light. But even in the darkness, she went on and on and on. She was still tacking in the morning when I woke up at dawn. But there's nae full like an old full. And only 6 months since we met, the nurse has gaily round my neck, for she's the whole thing set. And all because I took a notion for wee Martha McAloon, me that always told me da I would never settle down. How long have we got? 5 minutes. Well, 5 minutes then. It's very hard for a boy like me to keep the 5 minutes. But you know what day it is today? It is World Storytelling Day. So I'm going to reach out somewhere in the world. I'm buying time here. I'm trying to think what I'm going to tell you. And I'm going to tell you a wee story from, you saw one of the pictures there, you saw me in a classroom talking to these young adults. That was in Marrakesh. And those young people were all learning English. That's what they told me. Their English was amazing. It's better than some people I know in Glenarm. And we were telling them stories by way of improving their English so as they could pick up the plot and ask questions and so on and so forth. And I love Marrakesh. I've been to the festival there twice, and it's great to be able to go into schools and so on. Sometimes, in that case, I can tell people stories in English. Other times, I have to have an interpreter with me. And when I have an interpreter and you're in there with the wee kids, they're screaming and laughing their heads off. Problem with that is I don't know what the interpreter's telling them, you see. I'm hoping that she's telling them a story that I'm telling. But anyway, I'm going to tell you a story that I heard in Marrakesh, and I just love it. Way, way back, at the beginning of time, and all the world was beautiful. All the trees were hung with fruit, grapefruits, lemon, pomegranate, apples. And the pools were still, clear, crystal, cool water, and nightingales and all sorts of beautiful finches and parrots hung in the trees and sung and called. It was a paradise. And then one day, someone told a lie. And God was furious. And he came down and he said, "Someone has told a lie." And all the people thought, what difference could it possibly make? What difference could one lie make? And God said, from now on, every time I hear a lie, I will drop 1 grain of sand. And the people thought, 1 grain of sand? What difference could that possibly make? Lie after lie after lie after day after month after year after century after millennia. The Sahara Desert grew because people told lies. But if you ever are in the Sahara Desert, you will find little oases where the water It's crystal clear, beautiful. The trees are hung with pomegranates, apples, lemons, oranges, and the nightingales sing. The parrots clamber around the date trees, because not every man buys. Thank you.
We have tried to raise awareness on the condition of a once fine terrace of houses along Lansdowne Crescent, and our concerns have recently featured in a Belfast newspaper. Claire Rainey and I have been granted an opportunity to speak to the Causeway Coast and Glens meeting on Wednesday the 10th of April on the importance of retaining Quigley's Cottage at the old Ballywilling graveyard in public ownership. There is a public gallery and you are all most welcome to attend. Further details on this will follow in our weekly heritage newsletters. We are also engaging with the Council on Antrim Gardens, and we will have an update on our research and findings on the graveyard project at Old Ballywilling Church. We leave you this evening with another excellent photograph from our master photographer Kenneth Wood of the Elephant Rock. As we have said many times, it is your support that strengthens our voice and the importance of preserving the heritage in our community. Thank you, and please do invite all of your friends to join PHG. We will now say goodnight to our online audience.